A lot of people, I think they think their life just happens by chance, like where they're at. They think success just touches certain people, but there's a formula to it. I always say there's three things that true success is, and it's the three things that money can't really buy. It's loving relationships, a mind that's at peace, and it's a healthy body. And I think self-development is really trying to help you incur those three things. Ultimately, the people you're around, the experiences you're having is going to make or break your life. And so the more you can put positive things into your life, the better your life is going to be.
Jimmy, man, I'm excited to have this conversation with you. How you doing, brother?
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me on, Greg. I appreciate being here. It's an honor.
So, Jimmy, let's talk a little bit of real estate. I mean, I think today what I'd love to cover with you is, how to be successful in real estate, really what it takes for us to sort of lead successful lives as entrepreneurs as well. And then I'd really love to splash into the world of men's mental health, because it is an issue, right? I think as men, we are in a lot of cases isolating and suffering. And when it comes down to some of the work that you're doing around coaching and community, I think we can take a lot of insight from that. So let's kick off with real estate, man. Real estate is something that I'm passionate about. I grew up in a world where you bought one house, you fixed it up, right? You sold it. Maybe you bought two houses, you fixed them both up. You sold the second one, you kept the first one. So real estate has really sort of been choppy. I mean, it's been quite, we've been living in uncertain times with real estate. So talk to me a little bit about sort of what the market's like in the US. And more importantly, if people are interested in still pursuing real estate, what are some sort of things to think about, and how do we ensure we're successful in real estate?
Yeah, there's a couple principles that if you live by, you never get in trouble. I think real estate is the best investment out there, at least for somebody that's getting started in investing. Every time I invested in venture capital, I mean, I had 3 wins out of 30, and that's actually pretty average for how that goes. Every time I bought a house and did it the right way, I made a ton of money. And or bought any real estate. And so there's a couple of principles, and I got into real estate in 2005. And back then we didn't really have podcasts or mentors or YouTube to teach us how to do it the correct way. And so I built my portfolio very quickly. Within a year, I owned 13 houses, but I wasn't buying them the right way. And I broke the one rule, which I learned later, which is the number one rule when it comes to real estate investing, as you know, which is cash flow. And, so we tell every investor, no matter what, the first and foremost important thing is, does the house cash flow? And if it does, then the rest of the project is worth looking at. If it doesn't, then it's a dead no for us off the bat. And the reason for that is people get in trouble with any investment, whether it's a stock or whether it's real estate, when they have to sell it at the wrong time, right? Like the markets get a little bit tighter and you're losing money, you have to sell the property. I learned this the hard way in 2006. I bought one of the houses I bought, for an example. I think I bought it for like $270,000 at the time, and the market tanked here in the United States. And I was losing about $600 a month on the mortgage compared to the rent. And so the house fell to like $210,000. So I ended up having to sell it because I couldn't afford the $600 hit every month. And because I sold it at a bad time, I lost a ton of money. Well, that house, fast forward a couple of years ago, sold on the market. I looked it up just for fun and sold for almost $600,000. I would have made a ton of money as opposed to losing money. The only problem was I didn't have the cash flow, so I wasn't able to keep it. And so me and my partner, between us, we've sold almost 4,000 investment properties now to people. And, the one thing that we always say, no matter what, is it has to cash flow. So here in Utah, where I'm located, for years, we had one of the hottest markets in America. We used to be able to buy a house for, a condo, for example, for $160,000. You could rent for $1,800 a month, cash flowed $600. Awesome. Buy those all day long. Well, as our prices all went up, that same condo that was $160,000 after the COVID and all that went to $400,000. So it was nice for those of us that held a lot of property. But at the end of the day, the cash flows were no longer there. You'd be losing money. And so me and my partner, what we did, Greg, and this is what I just advise anybody wanting to get into real estate investing, is we researched 93 markets across America. We found the only ones that had the cash flow. There was about 3 that had good microeconomics, good macroeconomics, and had those cash flows. And that's where we've been buying homes the last few years. And so it is getting trickier. It's harder than ever to find the right deals that cash flow. And I think where people get in trouble is they just want to do something, and so they end up buying the wrong property. But I just, I tell everybody, spend 6 months studying, becoming an expert on real estate investing. If you spent 30 minutes a day for a year, you would know more about real estate investing than 99.9% of the population. And so spend the 30 minutes a day for a year, save money up at the same time. And then when you're ready, do that first property and snowballs from there. That's my philosophy.
Yeah, so it's interesting because I learned this lesson, or this is one of the principles I've always followed. It's not when you sell, it's not if you sell the house, it's when you sell the house, right? So, if you could hang on to real estate, and, the answer to all of this is like, hang on to it forever, right? The property value increases, your ability to leverage and use it as security, also kicks out. If it's positive cash flow, ideally that mortgage gets paid off, and then you've got like a finance-free property, and you keep going from there. I'm interested in regard to how you did your first 13 properties, right? I mean, I'm assuming that back then it's a little bit of a different financial pressure or bar to get into. So what were you doing? Were you leveraging the one property and borrowing against that in order to buy in the second one? Or did you have all the cash up front? Did you get investors? How did that work?
Yeah, so it's a mix of a couple different things. But back then, and this is why the real estate market collapsed in the United States, but you didn't have to put any money down. And so you could do what's called an 80-20 loan. So instead of putting 20% down, you could borrow that 20%. And so unfortunately, not knowing what I was doing, I was very aggressive. My first house I did, my mom co-signed for me. And then from there, I was doing a lot of these 80-20 loans. I also I was pretty successful at that time in my work. I was making, $250,000 a year. So I would put down 3%, 5% on a house, move into it because you're buying it owner occupied. And then I'd move every 6 months and buy another one. And so a little mix of everything. I recommend anybody that's wanting to do it now, your first property, is find something where you can rent half of it, whether rent the basement or buy a duplex or whatever. My own house right now, it's funny, Greg, I rent out my basement, and, I bought the house for $410,000 about 8 years ago, but built it new, built out the basement. I rent it for $1,500 a month. I put it on a 15-year loan. So I'm over halfway done with the mortgage. And with the amount of principal being paid off every month and the amount of income coming in, I actually make about $900 a month on my mortgage. And so I live in an $800,000 house, and I get paid to live there. And so, it's just find a house that you can rent half of it, or if you're single, rent bedrooms out. That's my recommendation. And you can do that every 6 months, buy another one and move somebody into the other part of it. And that's how you can really quickly build a nice portfolio.
Yeah, I bought my first property with the help of my parents. I was probably 21, right? And it was a condo, and I think I bought it for $125,000, and I rented out the second bedroom, right? It was a roommate, right? It wasn't so much like the weird Airbnb situations that you get in today, but it was like, that was the advice. They were like, listen, Greg, take the mortgage on and then get a roommate, and they'll pay half your mortgage now. And anyway, that property flips into a townhouse, same thing, kind of got two roommates there. And this was like the first 4 or 5 years, that I was able to keep these properties, build them, and then move into something sort of a little bigger and better. But it was all built on sort of that splitting that finance, right, through that roommate or through that tenant. I totally agree. If you could get a house and rent out the basement, and as you said, your $900 positive cash flow each month, so you're actually getting paid to live in your own house, and your mortgage is coming down, that's incredible.
Yep.
I live in Costa Rica, and there's these mountains. These guys showed up 50, 60 years ago. They bought the entire fucking mountain, right, for like $50,000. And they've hung on to it. Anyway, today, wow, these big areas are being bought by big developers, or in some cases, the owner is still keeping it and developing, building 2 to 300 houses in it, and creating these massive developments. And, from a $50,000, $100,000 investment from 50 years ago, right, today is worth multiple of millions, right? So as we said earlier, it's not if you sell, it's when you sell, right?
Yeah.
All right. Talk to me about the world of personal development. I mean, we're living in a world now where people are anxious, people are messed up, mental health is an issue. We've got this woke narrative going on. People are divided. People are they're not operating. I'm not sure how healthy we all are right now, right? When it comes down to people, and personal development, leaning into oneself and going through the work and the exercising and building ourselves is, I think, the answer to counter what we're being exposed to out there, right? So what is personal development to you? And then when it comes down to your clients, how are you helping them with that area?
Yeah, I mean, we're going to be the product of the people we spend our time with, the books we read, the things that go in our head, like the things we watch or listen to. And so ultimately, if you want a good result to come out, you got to put good stuff in. And there's so much noise out there today. There's so many negative things that are, we're being hit with every single day. And so ultimately, if for me, self-development or, self-improvement, all those different kinds of things, it's just essentially trying to up-level your life. It's trying to keep a positive mindset. It's, we know it's very easy to tell with, physically, right? Because if you eat good foods and you drink good things, you're going to look good. And if you don't, you're not. And so it's very easy to see it physically, but like mentally, it's the same thing. If you put good things in, you're going to be very strong and healthy. If you don't, then you're going to be weak. But it's very hard to tell sometimes. A lot of people, I think they think their life just happens by chance, like where they're at. They think success just touches certain people, but there's a formula to it. And, if you do the right things, you do have a good result come out of it. And if you learn better skills and you learn different, things like holding space and being able to, emote and be able to, take time between when you're stimulated and your response to that, and you just make better decisions on a day-to-day basis. So to me, self-development is simply trying to have, and I always say there's three things that true success is. And I think this is where self-development is so powerful, because it helps you in these three departments. And it's the three things that money can't really buy. And what it is it's loving relationships, it's a mind that's at peace, and it's a healthy body. And I think self-development is really trying to help you incur those three things. And so having a coach, having accountability groups, having mentors, having people that will hold you accountable, all those different things, having a support group, right? That's all part of it. And, I think for me, I have coaches and mentors because it compresses time. If I can learn these lessons, in 1 year that it took this guy 10 years to learn, then I'm going to be that much further ahead by doing so. And we know this. We go to school and we're younger, and most people just stop after high school or after college. They just never learn anything again, or they're learning things even in high school and college that just doesn't really help them become, a better version of themselves. And so I think self-development is just education, really. But ultimately, the people you're around, the experiences you're having is going to make or break your life. And so the more you can put positive things into your life, the better your life is going to be.
Yeah. I'm going to come back to the coaching work that you do with men. But before we get there, how did you go from real estate to this type of work? I mean, was it your own sort of entrepreneurial journey that, you were successful in business, and then obviously as your personal self, working on self, so showing up more effectively in relationships? What was that transition? What was that link?
Yeah. So essentially I got really good at doing real estate. I became the number one agent in my county and then my state. And a couple of years ago, I sold the most expensive home ever in Utah. It was a $32.5 million property, and so I had a lot of people just reaching out to me, wanting me to help them, hey, what are you doing? How do you keep your mindset? How do you keep your schedule? How do you do this? And so I started coaching real estate agents, and just I was one of the first realtors to really get really good at using social media. And so I was teaching that a lot. And a lot of people just kept saying, man, like, I want to know more about this. And when I sold that $32.5 million house, it was pretty interesting, Greg. It was there wasn't this huge reward. It wasn't empty, but it just didn't really do much for me. And I really had this epiphany. I was doing a meditation. I said, I need to do something that's a little bit more impactful to the world. And so I started playing with the idea, and it didn't come to me right away. I spent 2 years trying to work through this. And in that, I was getting a lot of messages. My first book that you mentioned had come out, which is called You End Up Where You're Heading, The Hidden Dangers of Living a Safe Life. And in that book, I really go through the hero's journey of how you kind of, figure out what your purpose is and some of those things. And so I had a lot of guys, though, that would reach out to me that would say either, hey, I don't know how to find my purpose. I don't know what my life is, doesn't have that much meaning. And then the second thing they'd always say is, I've always had a really tight group of friends, lots of really great friends. And people saw that on my social media, I think. And so people were reaching out all the time and saying, hey, where do I find a group of friends like you have? It was the most common question I was getting. And I was like, oh, I actually know how to build friendship really well, especially with men. So as I was leaning into all this, I said, you know what, if nothing else, I think if I can create a program where we can build community and we can help men connect on a deeper level, I think that would be my highest and best good. And so I just took these different lessons I'd learned. I'd had some friends call each other into integrity. I'd had these experiences when I went and volunteered at a prison that changed my life. I took this exercise we did there into my program. I had this experience with a friend where I helped him build some confidence, and I took that and I put it in my program. And so I just took all these different things, and in my own journey of trying to make myself better, I'd gone to all these seminars and conferences and masterminds and read hundreds of books. And so I just took all the best stuff and put it into this program. And then I really made the focus of the whole thing, though, is like, a place where men can connect on a deep level and really be able to express what's going on and be able to hold space for each other and just help each other essentially be vulnerable and authentic and therefore be able to trust the love that they then receive.
Yeah. Yeah. Operate within a tribe. So let's talk a little bit about your program and guys specifically. So you're coaching about 300 to 400 guys right now, and running through your program. What do you see with guys, right? I mean, and I love the title of your new book, right? Which is Be One, How to Be a Healthy Man in Toxic Times. I mean, you couldn't have nailed the title. You couldn't have nailed a better title, right? There's an attack on males, right? Where there's a mental health crisis, right? Mainly with men. We're seeing, we know that men have the highest suicide rate or, up to 80% of suicide is, by a male, right?
Yep.
So
it's 3 times higher than women.
Yeah. So what are some of the things you're hearing from guys? I mean, what are they stressed over? What are they battling with? What are the common challenges that you hear from men in 2024?
Yeah, I think, I had Chris Williamson on my podcast recently, and he said this so beautifully. He said, modern men are being punished for the patriarchy of the past. In the past, there were these advantages that the white male had, or some of these things, but nowadays there's really not. It's a lot harder in a lot of ways to be a man, and they don't have, there is these, society did have to correct some things, but nowadays, for men, it's, like if women have a problem or children have a problem, it's like, hey, how can we help them with this? We'll put billions of dollars into it. But if a guy has a problem, it's like, why can't they fix this? It's like they need to fix their problem here. And so I think there's just, ultimately, I think it's helping men feel safe. I think all of us will do whatever we need to, Greg, in this world to feel safe. And if we don't feel safe, then sometimes, we'll do crazy things or weird things to try to get to that space. And so I think ultimately trying to help men have a place where they feel seen, where they feel, like they have a voice again, and where they can just be men. Like you said, it's like, yeah, we live in a time where if we can't be honest about, certain things, like we can't trust the media anymore, we can't trust doctors, like all these things that we've been proven, politicians. And so men are really trying to, like, who do I look to? Where do I find guidance? Like, where can I find a way to live a happy life? And I think we've been sold a lot of negative messages that aren't true. A lot of the Hollywood portrays men as idiots and goofballs and things like that, but it's very rare. You don't see the masculine man anymore in these movies that comes to the rescue, and really does men shit that we need them to do. And so a lot of the problems I think with men, again, is just like feeling comfortable being okay being a man. I read a stat that over half of the men from ages 18 to 25 that are single have not approached a woman in person in over a year.
This is where I was going to go next, which is like in the dating world, right? So these young guys, right? Considering the fact that, dating today is how do you trust? How do you even begin to build an intimate, connected relationship, considering everything? So you're saying between 18 to 25, they haven't even approached a woman.
Not in person. So, they'll hide behind a keyboard or a phone or whatever else, right? They'll use the apps and things like that, but they don't know how to communicate. They don't know how to connect. And so, and for a lot of them, it's like, think about it. It's a lot riskier than it used to be. If you want to hit on a woman, it requires a level of uncomfortability to really attract the woman. You have to say something that's going to actually attract them. And instead they have to go for comfort, which just makes the woman unattracted. And so they've been denied and they've been rewarded for not doing it. And so I think even just opening up these dialogues again, I think the pendulum did swing far enough the one way that it's swinging back. And people are realizing like it's okay for us to admit that men and women need to be completely different, right? Like men need to be men and women need to be women. A woman's power is her feminine energy. It's her not being a man. It's her not having to be in control. It's, in a man's energy, when he's in his masculine, it's when he's the most powerful. And I think it is up to men to kind of step into this power again and kind of take it back. It's one of the things I like to teach the guys. We do breath work, we do meditation, we talk about our feelings, but then you have to get up and do something about it. You can't just sit in those things. Like, we are responsible for our own lives. I could teach a guy every single thing. There's so much information now. Everyone knows how to do things. You know how to be in shape. You know how to be successful. The information's everywhere. You could listen to your podcast, Greg, for a week straight. You would have all the skills and abilities you probably need from your guest that you could imagine. Now, you have to know how to implement that. And that's where the guy has to go, hey, I am in control of my own life. No one else is doing this for me. I'm going to take ownership. So I think a lot of what it is just teaching men to retake ownership. I was on a podcast literally before this one, and the guest, was talking about my past and something that happened to me when I was younger, where I had a partner essentially stole a bunch of money. And he started it by saying, now I know that wasn't your fault. And I said, let me stop you real quick. It was my fault. I chose that partner. I watched him do things that were dishonest, and I still went into business with him. I'm not letting myself off the hook here. And I think that level of extreme ownership, where we can look at every aspect of our life, and we are exactly where we are based on the decisions and the things that we've done. And so when you take that ownership, you have the power to change it. The second I say, well, the government did this, or well, this partner did this, you're giving up your own power to change it, because you're now a victim to it. You can't do anything about it. And so I think just helping get that message back across and helping men to understand, like, look, you are in control here, but you've got to be the one to do about this. Now, I'm going to give you a roadmap, and we're going to create a container for you to feel safe so that you can actually talk about what's really going on. And in that, you'll have support, you'll have accountability, but ultimately holding each other to a standard higher than we'll hold ourselves. It's getting around people that love us more than we love ourselves. I tell a story. I'm going to be speaking tomorrow. There's a big event here in Utah. There's a bunch of us are speaking at. We got David Goggins, who's going to be there. There's a great mentor for people, and Ed Milet and Andy Frisella, some of the top speakers in the country. And I have a chance to speak as well. And the talk that I give is about this. I got a chance to climb Mount Kilimanjaro a couple of years ago with some really amazing men, some NFL football players and some military guys. And one of the guys had one leg, and he got his leg blown off in a tank accident in Iraq. And we watched him climb the mountain. He trained for 6 months to get up there. And long story short, the guy that trained him, his guy's name is Dave Vobora, and he's a former NFL football player. He runs this foundation where they help people that have lost limbs in the war. And I was talking to him on the hike, and Dave told me, he said, dude, if this guy doesn't get to the top, he'll be dead in 6 months. He's been suicidal. And he, I think if he gets to the top, he'll get over the hump. So we're climbing this mountain. We get to the last day, and this dude fell over 100 times and just kept getting up and wiping himself off. But he just kept falling and kept falling. And eventually we got to this false summit. If you've ever climbed Kilimanjaro, there's this like false summit 600 feet from the top. And the guys that were in charge were like, hey, he's done. We need to send him down. It's getting dangerous. We're way behind schedule. And I looked at Dave. I'm like, dude, do something about this. And Dave came up and he grabbed him. He's like, hey, you're not done yet. We're going to the top. We came here to go to the top. We're going the extra mile. We're going to the top. And we carried him basically for the next, hour and a half to the top, and it changed his life. And I said, I say this, I'm like, sometimes we need somebody that when we're done, or like we've given everything we have, we truly had given everything he had, but somebody loved him more than he could even love himself in that moment and said, we're not quitting on you. And I think that's what we need. And those are the people we need to be trying to surround ourselves with. The people we need to try to emulate are the people that, like, when I'm tired and I'm not feeling the best, they're like, no, we do this because we said we're going to do it. We don't do what we say we feel like. We do what we need to do to get the job done. And so I think those are the messages, and those are the types of things that men are needing to relearn. I think this younger generation, a lot of things have been done for them, and it's not their fault, but it is their problem. And, parents trying to help them, the government trying to pay things for them and just do things for them. All those things cut into your confidence, because confidence is like, I don't need anybody. I can do this and I can get this done. And so I think that's what, where we need to get back to.
Yeah, you just nailed something. I think the experience has been, everything's been done for them so much that they haven't developed properly. I mean, as a guy, as a male, you've got to go, there's a certain rite of passage, right? There's a certain experience of hardship that you might need to go through to build that resilience and that motivation, that accountability. I was reflecting upon some conversations I've had with my 7-year-old, my son, amazing little dude. But shit, does he become deflective when it comes down to responsibility? And it hit me the other day. And I said to him, I said, listen, as a guy, all right, whether you think you did something wrong or if you did something, and whether you thought it was wrong or right, if there's an issue from the other side, your position is responsibility. You either say, I'm sorry, or you say, I get it, but you own that motherfucker, right? You own that position. You do not deflect, which is an excuse. And, as I'm listening to you talking now, I'm like, you know what? I'm one of my motivations is to raise a very strong male, and a healthy male. So on that note, let me ask you, what defines a healthy male? I mean, how would you describe what is a healthy man today?
Yeah, I think one of the things you just said is the most important. I think it's accountable, right? Accountable to his life, accountable to his actions, understands that he is where he is because of his own decisions and his own actions. I think another healthy thing about Mel is that he's not concerned about what's happened, but he's always pointed in the right direction. And he knows that this thing's going to have a lot of pitfalls, but you have a vision, you have a purpose, you have a desire for what you're trying to build. I think a healthy male is somebody who, is in integrity, like, whatever that means to you. Like, it might be different than me, than some guy that was born in a completely different way. But, I have dudes in my program, for example, like if you and your spouse have an agreement that you don't go to strip clubs and you go to a strip club, well, you're out of integrity. For another guy, him and his wife might go together to the strip club. It might not matter at all to him, but like ultimately being honest about who you are. I think it's when you're showing up the same, whether you're in private or in public. I think those are the kinds of tests you can give yourself to see if you're a healthy male. And I think just being able to be honest about your situation, I think that really is one of the most important things you can do as a human and as a man, is just to be honest about where you're at.
Mm-hmm. What about physical health? Is it, can a male or, I keep saying male, can a guy be a healthy male without having physical health?
He can be on the path, but I think you do have to have your health to a certain level in order to be a healthy man. Like, and here's the way I look at it. Like, if shit were to happen tomorrow, the way I explain it in the book is I was like, you can't be a liability. You have to be an asset. So if shit were to go down, are they going to have, like, we had one of the guys in my coaching group, we did a hike a few weeks ago, and he's a newer member of the group. He's an older member of the group, but he's way out of shape. And we had to carry him back on the hike. And I said to him, I said, hey, look, man, I said, I want to know exactly what you're eating and what's your exercise look like. I was like, you don't have to be shredded. I don't need everybody to look like a Marine, but at the end of the day, you can't be a liability to the group. And so he was doing 3,000 steps a day and eating just dog shit. And so I said, look, mandatory, you need to send me 10,000 steps a day or you're out of the program, period. And he hasn't missed. I get it every single day. He sends me a text. He's already lost 21 pounds in like 6 weeks. And, he got his shit together. And I think that's the best way to test it. I think both financially and physically, you just can't be a liability to those around you. People are going to depend on you. So can you physically lift things that you need to? If you're, there's a video of a guy putting his baby in, or he's putting some groceries in the truck, and he's got a baby stroller sitting there, and the stroller starts taking off, and he's way overweight, and he goes to grab the stroller, and it's headed towards literally a highway, and he falls over and can't get up. And thankfully, some stranger comes and saves it at the last second. But like, oh my gosh, and that's an extreme example. But if you're on, I was in Times Square last year. I was with a woman I was on a date with, and these two men just randomly started screaming and yelling at her. And I didn't know what was going on. I had no clue what was happening, but I just put myself in between her and them. And I was like, hey, what is going on here? Like, we're good. What is wrong with you? And by the time I just held a frame, and because I'm physically in a spot where I know how to fight, I know, I've taken Krav Maga training. I can at least make sure that if something were to go down, she would have been able to get away. And ultimately the guys just walked off, but it was like, the hell was that? And like, you just have to be able to at least protect the people in your life.
Yeah, I like what you described liability, which is if you're a liability to others financially or physically, that's a good sort of measurement, right? Like,
That's what I think. Yeah.
right? Can you move can you stop the stroller? Can you afford to financially secure your family and
I'll
your
give you
loved
an
one?
idea, Greg. I had a buddy call me this week and get a little emotional talking about this, but he's had cancer on and off for, 4 or 5 years, and he thought he was kind of beat it, but it came back pretty aggressively. And he didn't tell me. He went and saw the doctor, and one of our mutual friends called me and he said, "Hey man, you need to call so-and-so. His cancer came back and he needs this surgery, but he doesn't have any money." And so I called up my buddy and I was like, "What's going on? Talk to me." And, and he really needs to get this surgery done. And he's like, I said, "Well, are you doing it?" He's like, "I don't have any money." And he didn't call me. The friend called me, and he would never ask for it. And without thinking twice, I sent him $35,000. I said, "Dude, go get this shit fixed." Like you have to be able to be an asset to the people in your life. And like, it was such an easy thing for me to do. It took 2-second decision. I'm like, he's like, "I can't accept that." I go, "The hell you can't. You don't even have options, dude. Like, go take it. Let's go fix this shit." But that's what it looks like to show up financially, physically. Like, you have to be able to, like, can people count on you? If shit hits the fan, are you going to be the person that people can rally behind? And I think ultimately that's the ultimate stand of what a man is.
That's amazing. That's a great definition, and I think it's a great frame for us to work towards. It doesn't have to be, as you said, this intense marine, ripped, crazy, swinging out helicopters. But can you hold your own? Can you contribute? Can you give? Love your story about the fact that you're in a financial position to be like, you know what? It's not even a second thought, right? And that's what we need to aspire to be. Talk a little bit about your program, your coaching program. So if the audience and for any of the guys that are out there and they're looking for a community, and actually that's where I want to go quickly. I don't believe we can survive and go far without a community, and that's what a lot of what the work you're doing in your program. So talk to me a little bit about, and the audience, if guys are interested in becoming part of this community, and what could they expect? What would they get out of it? Who would they be working with or networking with, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, no, and one thing I love about my group is nobody cares what your background is as far as religion or race or any of that stuff. We even had our first gay guy join our last group, and he even got up and he said, "This is the first room I've ever been in where I feel like everybody here actually wants me here." We just don't care, and it's more about like, hey, what are you doing? What's your morals? How do you look at life, and how do you show up for each other and things like that? But my group is essentially, I wanted to keep my mastermind in pockets of 50 guys at a time, because once you get bigger than that, you lose the closeness, you lose the specialness of it. The culture is really hard to maintain. And so I'm just launching this week my 5th group of 50 more guys. We have a tribe that has a couple hundred guys, but like these leadership groups, and we get together every week on a call for an hour. And then once every 3 months, we get together in person for 3 days, and we'll do a lot of crazy stuff together and just kind of like really build the friendships, but go into some things, do a lot of exercises. But this is a place like, we have guys in our group that are worth 9 figures. We have guys in our group that are just getting started in life. But it's people come from all walks of life. And so it's a 2-year program. You commit for a year, and then you can decide to re-up for another year. And we've had about 96% of the people have stayed in the program, which is a testament to what it is. But it's really a way to connect and build a community, have 50 men supporting you. And we cover mindset, leadership, health, wealth creation, all the different things, relationships, social dynamics, all these different things that help you just become a better version of yourself. And it's been really cool now that, with a couple of years behind us, to be able to look and see the difference in all these men's life. And so that's what really makes it so powerful, is it's the relationships that you build and the accountability to these other men to work together towards a common goal.
Awesome. I love it. I love the work, man. I think it's vitally important. And I think we were kind of talking about this a little bit earlier, but we didn't sort of, express it. There's so much shit out there, and there's a lot of garbage out there. And if you're not careful, you're getting caught up in the wrong programs. You're doing the wrong things. And, to have the right community and the right learning and the right tools and the right support, this is the difference, right? I actually had a conversation earlier with we were pitching a client, and she was like, "Talk to me about your program," right? The leadership program. And we're getting into it, and this is what we do and how we do it. And there's one-on-ones. And she's like, "Shit." She's like, this sounds amazing. She was like, this is like really in depth. And I said to her, I said, you don't shift and go through change by sitting in an audience or sitting in a room and listening to someone for a couple hours or for a couple days. It's the work that you do over time, right? If we're shifting behavior, if we're developing new patterns, if we're breaking old patterns, if we're, working muscles, that takes time, right? It takes time to grow. Jimmy Rex, brother. The world needs a little more Jimmy, right? All right. Let me ask you this for the audience. If they wanted to get in touch with you, if they want to pick up your book, if they want to learn more about your program, drop some of your links, how can they find out more information?
Yeah. And Greg, just honored to have, to be a guest on your show. I really appreciate you having me. My last full year as a real estate agent, I sold almost 500 homes. It was like clockwork. And I just knew, I had a friend die that same time that was a realtor, and every article in the paper just said realtor dies, realtor this. I'm like, God, there's got to be more we can do to make a difference in this world. So I appreciate people like you also just making a difference. And I know it's, what I've been called to do, but I really post everything through my Instagram, Mr. Jimmy Rex. That's where I post all my new podcast episodes. That's where I post all the events I'm speaking at, things I'm doing. And so if you want to get a hold of me, I do answer all my own DMs. Send me a message on Instagram and would love to connect with you if you're listening to this and feel called to join us.
Amazing. Go check out Mr. Jimmy Rex. You'll find his podcast. You'll find his books. You'll find more about his coaching program, We Are They. And look out for the latest and greatest, B1, How to Be a Healthy Man in Toxic Times. Jimmy, at the end of the show, we come to the most important question, which is, what do you think we could all do to be better humans? And I'm going to actually change that. What do you think we could all do to be better men as of tomorrow?
People always say they hear somebody struggle and they say, dude, I'm here. Call me whenever you need it, And I always tell people, I say, look, they're not going to call you. You need to call them. And so honestly, it sounds simple and stupid, but pick up your phone every day and call 5 people and just pour into them. Just tell them what you love about them. Tell them why you love them, why you're grateful for them. Pick 5 people a day. I believe God will, let you know who to talk to, or if not, just do it random. I'll have days where I'm calling 5 or 10 random people and, pouring into them. And they're like, how did you know I needed this phone call? They were literally just next on my list. But at the end of the day, if you're doing it often enough, I think that's what the world needs, is just more people just sharing love and helping people feel, seen and understood.
You said that a couple of times, which is be seen. And one of the things we understand about our psychological needs as human beings is one of the needs is for significance. I need to feel important. And I think that is the beginning or the beginning of the end for guys, right? Where that starts to now be affected, where there's significance. They're not feeling important. They're not feeling like they're adding value. And if you're one of those guys, the answers are out there, and it's just about a little bit of work. Jimmy, thank you very much, man. To the audience, we are going to drop all of Jimmy's information and links in the show notes. So if you missed those, you can look at the show notes, but super simple. Mr. Jimmy Rex, he's going to pop up everywhere. He's got a huge social following and an amazing channel. I've been following you recently, actually. And if you like today's episode, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. If you know of a guy out there that might just need a little bit of a bump, a little bit of a push, check out Jimmy's stuff, or reach out. Maybe just give them a call, and that's all they needed for that day.
Thanks, Greg.